Was geht, liebe iksdeh-Zuschauer? Ich wünsche euch viel Spaß mit der Reaction. Nur ein kleiner Hinweis, das Video ist relativ lang und man braucht ein paar Minuten, um reinzukommen. Sobald man aber einmal in der Thematik drin ist, wird es richtig spannend und gerade auch wenn man dann das Ende sieht, ist das wie von so einem Film, dass es so ein richtig episches Finale ist. Also fuchst euch ein bisschen in die Reaction rein und ich wünsche euch viel Spaß.
Okay, Freunde, das ist jetzt einfach wie so ein Film, den man noch guckt. So, da freut sich auf jeden Fall iksdeh, wenn die 1-Stunden-Reaction kommt. Das Ding wird jetzt ein richtiger Blockbuster. Ich werde nicht so viel pausieren, weil das Video, glaube ich, lang genug dauert. Ich werde einfach so ein bisschen drüber labern, wenn sich's anbietet. Ich bin halt sehr Glitch interessiert. Und so diese Quest, die Sky Island zum ersten Mal zu skippen, das war ja immer in TotK diese unüberwindbare Hürde. Ist, glaube ich, einfach was, das kann man sich so... Das ist so ein schöner Fun-Fact. Wenn man mit jemandem so ein bisschen über TotK philosophiert, wenn man mit jemandem so ein bisschen über TotK abnerdet, dann ist es, glaube ich, geil, wenn man dieses Knowledge hat. Ich glaube, das ist so richtig schön unnötiges TotK-Wissen. Aber wenn man es dann mal weiß, ist es, glaube ich, sehr, sehr geil. Also, The Quest to Skip the Great Sky Island von Timber, rausgekommen vor 3 Wochen und ein monumentaler Durchbruch in TotK. Ich bin gespannt. Ich hab noch nichts hiervon gesehen. Ich habe keinen Schimmer, was hier passiert.
The Great Sky Island is to Tears of the Kingdom, what the Great Plateau was to Breath of the Wild. It's basically an extended tutorial section where you get most of the skills and abilities you will use for the rest of the game. For the many years we've played Breath of the Wild, skipping the Great Plateau was always an elusive goal. Unfortunately, the game strictly refuses to let you leave by causing you to void out if it detects you outside the Great Plateau before you complete it. So, the Great Plateau remains unskippable.
Stimmt. Das Great Plateau war komplett unskippable in BOTW. Krasser Scheiß.
Shortly after starting Tears of the Kingdom and wandering around the Great Sky Island, my first thought was, I wonder if this is skippable.
Ich mag aber die Art und Weise, wie es inszeniert. Also er hat viele so Freecam-Fahrten drin. Ich finde, er hat eine sehr angenehme Sprechgeschwindigkeit. Ich glaube, das Video wird mir gut gefallen.
Given that the Great Plateau was impossible to skip, my hopes were not high, but I still wanted to try. A lot of the longer videos on my channel were the result of me trying to skip GSI. Mostly learning more about the glitches I thought would be helpful and realizing that knowledge could be useful in other ideas.
Krass, der arbeitet da schon Monate dran.
This is that story to the best of my knowledge. I've been working on and off on this same task for a few months in between videos, as well as I've attempted so many things it would take hours to really explain everything I've tried. First though, it's really important to me that you listen and fully understand this part of the video. Without the awesome people in the speedrunning Discord and even the Hyrule Engineers Discord, I could 100% say I would have never gotten as far as I have. So many people have put in a lot of time and effort finding glitches, and the majority of the time, I'm just a sponge. I use these glitches.
Das ist so eine Sache, so Danksagungen, ne? Danksagungen interessieren den normalen Zuschauer gar nicht, aber ist derjenige, der etwas präsentiert, auf der Bühne steht, etwas erreicht hat, für den ist das Wichtigste überhaupt. Das ist so krass.
Like puzzle pieces to achieve a goal. Ich kenn das. Without the community, I would have no pieces to puzzle.
So, der Zuschauer denkt sich, ja komm, mach jetzt. Danksagung egal. Aber als Videoersteller denke ich, ich muss diesen Leuten Danke sagen.
So if you're interested, please join. There is one person I would like to acknowledge that's had a huge impact on this goal. Their name is Erigel. A lot of his efforts have truly made this goal seem within our reach and has influenced me to continue trying to make it happen. The issue with attempting to skip GSI is much like Breath of the Wild. The game checks Link's coordinates every frame. If they are outside the box they want Link to stay in, he is voided out and returned to the last usable coordinates. This is a pretty foolproof way to stop anyone from leaving GSI before it's completed. Because if you did somehow get Link out of the box, the first frame the game realizes it, it corrects it. In this video I'll be hopping around between files that have already finished the Great Sky Islands and files that have not finished GSI.
Okay, warte mal. Aber da muss ich jetzt meine Kamera verschieben, weil der blendet immer ein, warte mal, jetzt schon mal ganz kurz, der blendet immer ein, hier, after GSI und before GSI. Na, also quasi, damit ihr auch erkennt, in welchem Spielstand wir sind.
Files that have already finished the Great Sky Islands and files that have not finished GSI. I'll be putting these markers in the top right corner whenever that information is relevant.
Spirit Tracks Musik.
The beginning of GSI skip was probably a pipe dream in many people's mind, but I would say it mostly started to get some real effort behind it in July of 2023. This was due to the fact that when doing stuff out of bounds in the prologue, you can trigger a dialogue state while falling. This is when I saw a message from Erigel posing the first question. If you can ignore the void out while in dialogue, then can we text dive on GSI to achieve the same thing? Both Erigel and I made some efforts to even get one text dive on GSI, but in the first few attempts, nothing came of it. And to be honest, I moved on to other things. Not that I didn't think it was possible, but I started to feel like it was unlikely.
Nicht böse gemeint, aber könntest du mehr deutsche Videos reagieren? Joshua, ich würde auf mehr deutsche Videos reagieren, wenn es mehr deutsche Videos zu diesen Themen geben würde. Das Problem ist, in Deutschland ist die Speedrun und Glitch und was weiß ich Community, die sich einfach mit diesen spannenden Themen zu den Spielen beschäftigt, quasi tot. So, es gibt so Leute wie Sean und Firebro und auch Tiny Goomba und so, die machen halt Video-Essays darüber, wie nostalgisch Mario Galaxy ist oder warum sich der DS nicht so gut verkauft hat. Aber sobald es irgendwie darum geht, sich ein bisschen genauer mit einem Videospiel zu beschäftigen, ist die deutsche Community halt komplett raus. Na? Also ich würde auf deutschen Stuff reagieren, wenn es den geben würde.
Later that day, Erigel found out that these logs have a special property that allowed them to move during a dialogue, and that rolling these logs into Link while in dialogue can push him off the ledge. While this got you off of GSI, as soon as you finish the dialogue, the game figures out you've left and sends you right back. But the information this
Okay, also im Endeffekt, um es nochmal ganz kurz zusammenzufassen, wenn man sich in einem Dialog befindet, wird man nicht vom Spiel zurück teleportiert. Also das Spiel überprüft immer, wo befindet sich Link, wo sind die Koordinaten von Link, und sobald man sich außerhalb der Sky Island befindet, wird man geportet. Wenn man aber in einer Textbox ist, passiert das nicht.
We know that text diving is possible on GSI, and Link can exist outside of GSI while in a dialogue. Armed with this knowledge, Aquacluck used some cheats to edit Link's coordinates and warp him to the Army platform while in a text dive. The thought was if we can somehow get Link to Army while in dialogue, could we even trigger the fight?
Okay, also jetzt geht's quasi darum, dass man Link zum Final Boss teleportiert, während er von der großen Insel runterfällt, um den Kampf zu triggern und eventuell damit das Zurückwarpen auf die Insel zu verhindern.
And if we could trigger the fight, would it void us out if we ended the dialogue? Aquacluck was able to trigger the fight and not get voided out. This was huge information. Now we know that if we make it to the Army platform without voiding out, the trigger will take priority.
Lol. Okay, wenn man zum Armeekampf, zum Final-Kampf kommt, wenn man den erreicht, wird man nicht mehr zurück auf die Tutorial-Plattform teleportiert.
And then after making it to Army, we can beat the game. Clouded had shared a video.
Das klingt jetzt schon so easy. So nach dem Motto, ne? Ja, okay, dann wissen wir doch schon, was wir tun müssen.
Where it was determined that you didn't need to be standing on the platform to trigger Army. You could be standing or climbing anywhere in the Army trigger to start the fight. This led us to attempting to trigger the Army fight from out of bounds, which was found to be possible. So now we know that we don't have to be standing on the platform to trigger the fight, and we don't even need to be in bounds.
Okay, man kann den Kampf sogar out of bounds triggern. Okay, das heißt, man muss irgendwie out of bounds auf der Insel kommen, in einem Dialog und irgendwie out of bounds diesen Kampf triggern.
To trigger the fight. Let's take a few moments to explain a few of the major glitches I use in this video. Fuse entanglement is when you attempt to fuse an object to a shield, but change shields before the fuse is complete. This binds the state of the object to the shield, while still allowing it to be controlled as if it were a normal object in the game world. Key thing to note is that if you put the shield away or get too far from the shield, the object it's entangled with will also get removed from the world.
Okay, das ist quasi der erste Glitch, dass du Sachen an dein Schild fused und im letzten Moment das Schild wechselst. Dann bleibt das Objekt liegen, denkt aber, es ist mit dem Schild verbunden und damit kann man viele andere Glitches machen.
You can zuggle this shield by putting your back against a wall and dropping the shield, switching shields, and dropping the new shield extremely quickly. This puts the shield in a limbo that's neither equipped or in our inventory. This allows us to smuggle this object into the past through saves or into a brand new game.
Und mit diesem Glitch ist das Schild, also im Endeffekt, dieses Schild smuggeln, was er gerade tut, sorgt dafür, dass er Schilde zwischen Spielständen hin und her nehmen kann. Was ist das für eine abgefuckte Scheiße?
This is called Zuggle Load Object Transfer, or ZLOT. Zlotting an object allows for a new glitch called a recall lock. Recalling the zlotted object and then loading a save mid-recall causes the object to be locked in place. This causes the object to be frozen in time until we use recall again, or put the shield in our inventory to delete it. These are the glitches that allow me to safely take multiple objects into a new game.
Du kannst einfach Objekte mit den Fähigkeiten zwischen Spielständen hin und her schicken. Was?
Mentioned in the Discord that if you send through an object that was fuse entangled, the object would continue to fall, which led Ergol to test more on its use in text diving. At first it didn't seem likely, as when he fuse entangled a Zonai wing and attempted to ascend through it while it was in the air, nothing would happen. We eventually discovered that non-Zonai objects would work, but Zonai devices will remain frozen during dialogue, so we have new information to add. Fuse entanglement can create situations that make text diving easier, and that this also opens up the possibility of using many different dialogues.
Die TOTK-Community hat einfach einen Stop-and-Swap neu erfunden. Ja! Ja, das ist wie Banjo-Kazooie und Banjo-Tooie, ja. Also quasi, um es nochmal zusammenzufassen, dadurch, dass jetzt quasi diese Objekte zwischen den Spielständen hin und her nehmen können und damit dann auch Decken diven können und alles drum und dran, sind wohl jetzt diese Textbox-Warps deutlich einfacher. Was wir wiederum brauchen, um irgendwie, um runter zum Ganon-Fight zu kommen.
I would say I was still a little new to most of the glitches. While trying to beat Mulgara with the boat, I got a little sidetracked on the Ultra Broken glitch. Some of you may remember it as Wacko Boingo, but you may not understand why the name was changed. At first, Wacko Boingo was just some silly, maybe not too useful way to get across the map super fast. After some deeper investigation though, it became obvious that it was much, much more than that. Ultra Broken Flight is just one of the many things that can be achieved, but there are so many
das ist eine komplette Glitchliste. Was zur Hölle?
Branches of glitches that spawn off this one cutscene that it has a document of its own. Anyways, I got extremely deep into Ultra Broken. Ghost glue is what happens when you attempt to glue an Ultra Broken object to any other object. It's constantly trying to get close enough to glue, but never actually does. While Ghost glue was a known glitch, its limitations and uses were not yet known. What interested me about it was its ability to be separated, and regardless of how far the objects were apart, you could get them to come back together. Which got me thinking, can I create a platform that moves Link between 2 points? After a lot of research, I was able to transport Link, but also do it while in a dialogue state. The primary issue was applying this glitch to the GSI skip, as it takes beating GSI to get to this point. This is when GSI skip became my primary goal. We know that text boxes will allow us to ignore the void out. So this will be the state we are in while we are trying to make our way to the army platform. Meaning that once we start the dialogue, everything that happens has to happen almost completely without our input. Given that I can create a platform that can take me off a GSI to just about anywhere on the surface, I first try an idea that I had. If army can be triggered via League's presence at the end of a dialogue, is there anything else that can be triggered?
Okay, also jetzt geht's im Endeffekt darum, dass man sich aus einem anderen Spielstand gefuste Objekte mitbringt, weil das geht ja auf der großen Insel noch nicht, weil man die Fähigkeiten noch nicht hat. Und diese Objekte dann durch weitere Glitches so bearbeitet, dass sie Link, während er in einer Textbox ist, weil wir haben herausgefunden, nur während er in einer Textbox ist, kann er die Insel verlassen, die Objekte so schleudert, während in Textbox, dass Link auf dem Objekt steht und irgendwo hingeschleudert wird, wo er die große Insel verlassen kann.
Both of the starting quests for Riju and Tulin are triggered by Link's presence. Unfortunately, you have to make it there twice. This is due to the fact that the Blunt Boot spawns if you get too close to one of the 4 areas too soon. Afterwards though, you can trigger the cutscene. It still voids you out afterwards though. Earlier when it was found out...
lol, okay. Also man kann selbst so Story-Sequenzen triggern, wird dann aber wieder zurückgesetzt.
You can trigger Army and not get voided out afterwards. I assumed it had something to do with the new boundary box around Army, and began to look to see if there was another one somewhat like it. And yeah, minigames, house building, and the battle at Karkar Bazaar, among many others.
An der Stelle mit Rio hast du was Tolles im LP gesagt. Och nee, Jan, was habe ich da gesagt? Was habe ich im Rio-Kampf gemacht?
My thought was, even if we get stuck there, maybe we can use it like a stepping stone, but unfortunately that was a dead end. While doing some work with the Ghost Glue platform, there were a few issues along the way, mostly getting the platform to start moving at an easily manageable time, given that I was currently using Ultra Hand or Recall to break the lock holding the platform in place, so that I have limited access to my shields and weapons, which in theory gives me 2 stops for the platform to move. So couldn't I just make a platform to head under the castle and get to Army? Unfortunately, the platform works best when it has line of sight, meaning nothing is in the way as the platform can easily get hung up.
Sie hat irgendwie gesagt, schön, dass du gekommen bist. Oh nee, ja, nee. Nee, das habe ich nicht gesagt, das hast du jetzt, das hast du erfunden. An alle Videozuschauer, ihr schaut nicht in den Chat, das ist eine Lüge, was da steht.
On objects. To make it through all this in 2 or 3 lines is impossible. Maybe. While my hopes were high, the game had other plans. Given that it was pretty easy to move Link from one point to the other, my main issue was finding a path to Army that wasn't extremely complicated. We have a lot of options for clipping, and
okay, es geht jetzt darum, dass man den passenden Weg findet, ne? Also wir können Link mit einer Plattform schleudern, aber sobald wir in der Textbox sind, haben wir keine Kontrolle mehr über das, was Link macht. Das heißt, jetzt ist die große Aufgabe, einen Weg zu Ganon zu finden.
If I could just clip underneath the depths, I would have a pretty unobstructed view of the army area. Clipping is the act of moving the normal collision Link has with walls, floors, and ceilings. We have many options for clipping, but only 2 provide us with a clip that's somewhat sustainable. So our options are Zuggle Overload Clipping or SDC Clipping. Both require a steering stick. Overload Clipping is zuggling so much that the game starts to lose
jetzt wird gerade jeder Clipping-Glitch erklärt. Einfach akzeptieren, Freunde. Einfach akzeptieren.
And getting on a steering stick in this state will cause a clip. SDC is when you fuse and tangle the steering stick, then drop the shield and attempt to ride the stick shortly afterwards. The downside to clipping using a steering stick is that it takes away some of the dialogues we can use. Most dialogues use an A press to get started, but since we are on a steering stick, that option is unavailable, meaning we will need to use a dialogue that starts by completing a Korok puzzle or bothering a construct. So I test every possible dialogue with both versions of the stick clip. Both the Korok dialogue and the Construct dialogue would just freeze you mid-clip when the dialogue...
Wird das für Speedruns dann benutzt? Josef, ich glaube nicht. Also ich glaube, das ist jetzt eine richtig krass... Das ist jetzt diese gesamte Weg dahin, wie es überhaupt möglich ist. Ich weiß nicht, auf was für eine Lösung dieses Video dann am Ende kommt. Aber ich kann mir nicht vorstellen, dass das am Ende in Speedruns genutzt wird.
Started, only to resume the clip after the dialogue is finished. I begin to make the assumption that since the stick is a Zonai device, and Zonai devices can't move during dialogue, that must be the reason Link is getting frozen. Lido shared a video where he used SDC to clip into a cutscene trigger, and it continued to cause him to clip beneath the room. This was good and bad news. The good news is we know it's not impossible to clip during a dialogue. The bad
Okay. Das ist immer gut, wenn er diesen Text macht. Dann fasst er immer nochmal zusammen, was sie herausgefunden haben. Also während einem Dialog kann man durch den Boden klippen. Ja. Das Problem ist, diese Dialoge, die man braucht, um durch den Boden zu klippen, gibt es nicht auf der Great Sky Island.
There are no dialogues on GSI that start via Link's presence. Given that I had already tested the dialogues on GSI, I assumed that the clip needed to also trigger the dialogue in order for it to work.
Ich dachte, da kommt noch ein Punkt 2. Er hat einfach Punkt 1 aufgelistet, aber keinen Punkt 2.
At this point, I started to get a little desperate. I tested if the steering stick was ultra broken, if it was recall locked. Someone posted a video of a gas fan blowing them and their horse into the depths. And that made them clip. But we can't get a horse on GSI, so I tried to replicate...
Digga, dieser Ventilator auf dem Schild und auf dem Stick, das sieht so falsch aus.
The same thing with a steering stick, and it didn't work. There's one cutscene which was interesting. If you hit this fan, it will trigger the construct to give you the battery. Getting this battery will cause you to fall slowly. So I'd fuse and tangle the stick and force the shield to drop in the void while in dialogue. It took over 30 minutes to fall all the way down from GSI, but I still landed on the ground.
Aloy, Speed mal 100, man fällt richtig langsam runter.
There's a large void out space in the back of Hyrule. I began to wonder if there are any holes in the geometry that would take me to the depths, but it was practically impossible to search thoroughly. I definitely tried text diving and looking. Unfortunately, it always leads to a soft lock of Link voiding out over and over.
Bruder, ich meine, er macht schon Fortschritt, aber er hat jetzt von Juli bis Oktober noch keinen wirklich, also er hat so ein bisschen rausgefunden, okay, wir können Zonai-Devices von Spielstand A nach Spielstand B mitnehmen und wir können in Dialogen irgendwie klippen, aber so wirklich viel Progress ist noch nicht passiert, ne?
So my pace is slowing down, but I get tagged in a thread about the success of stealing the infinite minigame wing. Mulberry had used some of the information in my Ghost Glue video to steal the wing for the first time, so I had to see how he did it. Upon watching the video, 2 things strike me as odd. The wing just moved a decent distance while in a dialogue state, and Mulberry had fell down the chasm while in the dialogue state. Normally, Zonai devices can't move during a dialogue. I say they can't move, but they can move
Ja, der kocht was Brutales am Ende, ja, ich merke
very
schon.
slightly, so I attribute the movement to that. And the text dive was probably just a coincidence. But then he steals it again, and Janeway for President posts a video of them stealing it as well. There is no reason why this wing should move this freely in dialogue. I keep testing because it would be pretty useful to learn how Zonai devices can move during dialogue. Only
Der kocht keine dubiose Matsche, ne?
to realize that it moves during dialogue just because it does. This wing has a different name than the other wings in the game.
Okay, also es gibt wohl, das Problem ist, soweit bin ich ein TotK noch nicht, es gibt wohl ein Minigame, wo man so einen Flieger bekommt. Und diesen Flieger kann man wohl aus dem Minispiel klauen und der scheint ein anderes Objekt zu sein als ein normaler Flieger. Und deswegen hat dieses Sonar-Device, ne, also quasi der Flieger aus diesem Minigame, andere physikalische Eigenschaften, ne, und kann deshalb in Glitches ganz anders verwendet werden.
That's part of the reason why it lasts forever. This object needs to be named something else so it can contain a different tag that allows it to be infinite. Knowing this, Echo found a tag that was in the list for the normal wing but not for this infinite wing. Event Physics Pause. Maybe this was the tag responsible for forcing the normal Zonai devices to be frozen during dialogue. She gets a list of objects that has this tag that prevents movement. But I ask, can I get a list of objects that don't have this tag? I check the list and there's a steering stick on here.
Also, um das aber jetzt mal kurz zusammenzufassen, diese ganzen Listen, die wir gerade gesehen haben, die erste Liste, die geschickt wurde, waren quasi Objekte, die freezen, während ein Dialog sozusagen stattfindet. Und jetzt hat er sich die Liste geben lassen von 12.000 Objekten, die nicht freezen während einem Dialog. Und ein Control-Stick ist wohl auch in dieser Liste, der nicht freest. Und das ist wichtig, weil wir bisher immer mit dem Control-Stick out of bounds geglitscht haben. Das heißt, er muss jetzt wahrscheinlich irgendwie rausfinden, was zur Hölle dieser Control-Stick ist und warum der nicht freest, während alle anderen normalen Control-Sticks freezen.
This stick is labeled 03 versus 01, so I just call it the 03 stick. There are only 3 in the game and they are attached to these Yiga builds in the depths.
Ah, das sind besondere Steering-Sticks, die nur bei diesen Yiga-Verstecken vorkommen.
Unfortunately, you can't just pull them off, but with a well-placed recall-locked hoverstone, it's free. My assumption was that since the steering stick is a Zonai device, it would stop the clip and freeze Link. But if this stick can move during dialogue, then I might be able to clip down. I grab the stick and start to test.
Das ist so krass, ne? Das ist so krass. Die finden einfach im Code einen anderen Stick, der anders funktioniert. Aber irgendwie finde ich es geil, das jetzt so mitzubekommen. Weil jetzt, durch dieses Video kriegt man so ein richtig schönes Verständnis, wie Leute überhaupt auf diese Glitches kommen. Pablo Boss, es geht gerade darum, wie die TotK-Community es geschafft hat, die Greats, also quasi die Startinsel, ne? Die fliegenden Himmelsinseln, die Tutorial-Insel, zu überspringen.
To use this dialogue in the Terrytown race that can be started by shooting the build on the platform. I get both the normal stick and the 03 stick. I'm testing the normal stick as a control to make sure that it reacts the same way it does to this dialogue as it does to the ones on GSI. First I tried to make it just move during dialogue, and it does. I attempt to ride the normal stick while in dialogue, and I freeze, which is to be expected. I ride the 03 stick and wow, this is crazy. Now for the moment of truth. I attempt to clip on the 03 stick. This is it. I've done it. I'm gonna skip GSI.
Holy
With
shit.
all the factors combined, I
Mit diesem besonderen Stick schafft er es, in einem Dialog zu klippen, was mit allen anderen nicht funktioniert hat.
know that if I use the dialogue that
Das ist
gives
so krass, die finden einfach den anderen Stick, mit dem das geht, in den Gamecodes. Und irgendwie, also, ich verstehe zwar nicht ganz genau, wie wir jetzt hier hingekommen sind, aber das verstehe ich jetzt wieder und ich hype das gerade. Geil, der 03-Stick ist so krass.
me access to my inventory, I can make a platform underneath Link that I can then break and send to the army platform. I don't know where to go to trigger the fight, but
Zieh durch,
I'm 100%
Digga!
sure I can figure that part out. You might think that this clip would cause me to just fall through my platform, but once I reach the boundary for the depths, the stick will get deleted, and that will remove my ability to clip. I'll worry about whatever else I need to do when I get that far. So now, I just want to get to the depths by clipping through GSI and the surface. I picked this Korok because it's over water. The depths map is a reverse of the surface map, and all the points of water just happen to be out of bounds already. This allows me to drop beneath the depths and gives me a pretty direct shot at Army.
Okay, also er lässt sich jetzt absichtlich ins Wasser unten klippen, weil ja quasi der Untergrund ist ja quasi die reversed Version von der normalen Welt. Das heißt, wenn er in der echten Welt ins Wasser fällt, fällt er in der Unterwelt quasi in den Berg und ist direkt out of bounds. Und er muss in der Unterwelt out of bounds kommen, damit er direkt zum Ganon-Fight, zu dem Armee-Fight kommen kann. Das Problem ist jetzt, wie kriegt der O3 auf die Himmelsinsel? Na, man kann ja Sonai-Objekte zwischen Spielständen hin und her transportieren.
Let's give it a shot.
Also muss es einfach nur aus einem anderen Spielstand mitbringen.
You know, maybe it has something to do with it being a Korok. The Korok dialogue isn't like the one I used in Terrytown. It moves the camera away from Link, and that probably has something to do with it. But that's cool. I could still use one of the constructs. So let's just give that a shot.
LOL, da freest er wieder?
So what's weird here is that for the Korok, if I just ride the steering stick, it moves during dialogue just fine. But for the constructs, it doesn't. Even though if I'm not
Okay, das heißt, er kann jetzt nur klippen, wenn er mit einem Croc redet und nicht, wenn er mit einem Konstrukt redet.
riding it, it'll move during their dialogue just fine. I redo the hours of testing with this new steering stick, which includes sending it to a new game just to try this one dialogue. Because unfortunately, once you get the battery, you can't do that dialogue again.
Digga, er hat so viele Stunden in dieses scheiß Projekt gesteckt.
Though I can save just before I do it and try it over and over. But yeah.
Und weil man dafür diverse Spielstände braucht, dürfte das auch nicht für einen Speedrun sein. Es geht einfach darum, das unerreichbare Ziel zu erreichen. Ja, richtig.
I do see that this stick acts in some different ways, but nothing that lets me clip.
Scheiße.
At this point, I'm
ist der
definitely
O3-Stick doch nicht der richtige Stick? Mann, ich dachte, mit dem könnte es klappen.
I would estimate that most of what I've shown here is about 25% of my testing. I really felt like I was so close to clipping, and all I needed to do was find the right dialogue, but none of them worked.
Bruder,
This is when someone
herber
mentioned
Rückschlag.
that the Korok above the Room of Awakening was obtainable prior to the title cutscene. As soon as I heard that, I knew I could skip the title cutscene, but it was bittersweet. Skipping the title cutscene was just me trying to cope with the fact that I wasn't feeling good about GSI skip, which is where some of these clips come from. Normally, if you can get on a steering stick and fly into the title cutscene, the stick freezes in place, and that causes Link to be stuck in place as well. But with the O3 stick, it doesn't get frozen, and Link will stay with it. It's cool, but it's pretty much me losing it after being so sure that I had it.
Bro, diese Sequenz. Oh, wir sind schon im
I make my
November.
Halloween video and the title skip video. I start planning some other videos and ideas and just sort of put GSI on the back burner.
Bruder.
The new free cam mod was available, so I combined the want to make a video with that and the want to remake my old skip video. Currently, free cam only works on 1.1 and up, so I update to 1.1.1 and get some cool camera shots. Making the skip video took a little bit longer than I thought it would, but now that I have the free cam, I kinda want to check some things out that I couldn't before. First, I want to see what happens during the Korok
Im
dialogue.
Dezember ist jetzt erst die Mod für die Free Cam herausgekommen. Und dafür musste er auf eine höhere Version gehen. Und imagine, diese höhere Version ist jetzt relevant, dass das funktioniert.
And it turns out that Link is cold during the dialogue, which is pretty
Und
interesting.
mit der FreeCam-Mod hat er jetzt viel mehr Möglichkeiten, Dinge zu überprüfen.
It means that when using the Korok Seed dialogue to text dive, Link is actually just invisible, and we're moving an invisible Link. But it's no use to us. The next thing I want to check out is the void behind Hyrule, just to see if there are any holes that I could use to fall out of bounds.
Ach krass, er kann jetzt die ganze Welt viel... Er hat das davor immer auf Originalkonsole und alles gemacht. Hä? Und jetzt kann er das einfach mit der FreeCam überprüfen.
And there isn't a single spot. I decided to do another test with the steering stick to see if I fall from up high and hit the dialogue, would that do anything? I missed my shot. To be honest, I know it's not going to work, so I don't even try again. One thing I've been wanting to work on is this text slide. It looks pretty cool, and if I can somehow make it faster, then maybe it'll get used in speedruns.
Die FreeCam kam erst 6 bis 7 Monate nach Release für AD, ja.
So I was gonna start a new game to make it to that point. I figured I might as well bring a stick with me to give that a shot. I arrived and I tried it again. My shot hit this time, but again I'm frozen in place. I don't know what I thought would change, but it's been so long since I've tried, I barely remember what I have and haven't tried. This is the point I've been at so many times with this text box. Once I get the battery, I'll start slowly falling down and I'll just be stuck out of bounds in the GSI floor. Did I just clip? No, I couldn't have.
Bruder, halber Kinofilm!
Have already been out of the bottom before the dialogue started. But just to be sure, I'll wait till I land on the surface and see what happens. It takes about 30 minutes to hit the surface, so I wait and I wait.
Pause, champ!
This is extremely good news, but I don't know why it happened. I put in a lot of effort and this is no different than the other attempts. Well, let me try the same thing with a normal steering stick. It works the same way.
Die geupdatete Version kann das sein? Freunde, Version 1.1.1 oder welche er hat?
So what's different now? Maybe using the free cam is breaking the game in a way that allows it to work. Wait a minute. I'm on 1.1.1.
Oh
and I've done all my testing on 1.0.
Das ungewollte Update wegen der Freecam!
I had some fears that updating might give different results, but I was so burnt out at the time I didn't feel like updating. And even attempting it, I was pretty sure it wasn't gonna work.
Es können manchmal so simple Dinge sein. Du steckst Tage, Wochen, Monate in ein Problem und dann änderst du eine kleine Sache und auf einmal funktioniert alles. Das, Freunde, ist das Leben eines Informatikers.
I've been using an autosave, so let me make a hard
Wirklich.
save.
Jedes Informatikerproblem ist so, dass du wochenlang krasse Probleme mit irgendwas hast und da änderst du eine klitzekleine Sache, alles geht.
And then load
Immer,
1.0
das ist das Leben eines Informatikers.
Again. So we could just go back to that. But before I get too deep into building the platform, I want to just text dive through the water and get below the depths. Wait, what? I'm on 1.1.1. Now it's acting like 1.0. I feel GSI skip slipping away from me again. What did I do differently? Maybe I did something on this save and that's what locked me out of it? Let me start again.
Jetzt ist er quasi wieder auf 1.1.1 gegangen und jetzt geht's wieder nicht.
From a new file. And it works. So let's start from scratch on 1.0. And it works here too. Normally I would want to figure out why, but this is very, very strange behavior. When an issue persists through a hard reboot of the game, it gets a little difficult to truly tell what's going on. And to be honest, I know how to clip now, and I don't really care about the why right now.
Wie viel bis jetzt blickst du so durch? Ja, also ich denke so 30-40% verstehe ich. Aber es reicht mir, um die Reise zu verstehen.
Autosave and a hard save, that's messing with it.
Jedes Mal, wenn ich sowas sehe, will ich Glitchhunter werden. Okay, bei mir löst es genau das Gegenteil aus. Wenn ich sowas sehe, denke ich mir, Alter, ich will so einen Bums auf gar keinen Fall machen.
This would explain why I didn't find it before. This isn't the easiest dialogue to test, and I have no idea the state of the file during all my attempts. So future Timber here, I had to re-record some footage because I couldn't find the original, which means I needed to figure out why it happened to record it.
Das heißt, er glitscht jetzt manchmal auf der 1.0 und manchmal auf der 1.1.1 und manchmal geht's nicht und er weiß nicht warum.
It's the hard save. Any autosave before or after the hard save on GSI will work fine. But if you load a hard save...
Jetzt läuft's darauf raus, ob du ein Autosave auf der 1.0 oder auf der 1.1.1 hast oder ob du ein manuell gespeichertes hast und wann du vor bzw. nach dem Update auf die verschiedenen Versionen gespeichert oder nicht gespeichert hast. Du kommst dir auch komplett verarscht vor.
I ultimately stuck with 1.1.1 due to the fact that it allowed me to have a few more shields zuggled before I started to overload the game. I tend to be around 10 to 12 shields deep with my builds, so having the extra headroom in 1.1.1 makes up for some of the glitches.
Okay, er nimmt jetzt 1.1.1, weil er da mehr Schilde haben kann. Und das hilft ihm bei manchen Glitches.
It doesn't have. Now for the drop below the depths. And yeah, I can get down there. This is really it. The only issue is this clip takes forever. It takes 30 minutes to get through the first surface clip and another 15 to get below the depth.
Bro, wenn du diesen Trick jetzt einmal probieren willst, musst du das Spiel 45 Minuten laufen lassen. Für einen Versuch. Kannst du dich auch erschießen.
I did a test just to see, and it takes an hour and 40 minutes to get from GSI all the way to the floor out of bounds below the depths. 45 minutes is nothing though if it means I can skip GSI. So this is the fun part. Or at least it was supposed to be. I can't catch a break. Up until this point, I never really looked for the army trigger that was out of bounds. But before I make my first attempt, I needed to find out where that is. This is the army platform at the end of the game. It's all contained in this room with no real way to get in from the outside. After defeating army, you can get back here to go to the Ganondorf fight. And the army trigger is right here.
Du musst auf dieser Plattform landen, um den Armeekampf zu triggern.
There's also a void out layer right here. The void out will destroy any object and void Link out if he touches it. And the part of the army trigger that's out of bounds is right here. This means I have to transport Link around the back side of army to get into the trigger. I also have to dodge the void out zone because even though while Link is in dialogue he can survive through the void, objects cannot. So I run the risk of losing my platform if I'm not careful. Honestly, I just want to make an attempt. Having Link anywhere near army is a huge success, so I'm just gonna YOLO it. I place the steering stick here so that I'm over water. I get the coordinate of my stick and place my build underneath it. Since the shrines in Overworld share the same world box, I go into a shrine and get the build to fall just below the depths. And now I just gotta get out of bounds.
Jetzt testet er quasi den Fall, ob das funktioniert, wie er
There's
will.
my build. I set it up in the correct spot, and then ghost glue my hoverstone and take it to the location. If you remember Ultra Broken Flight, I typically add a spare board to my build so that I can just fly my hoverstone to the location. But here is the fun part. I have to squeeze into this spot without going too far down to void out and destroy my hoverstone. I can't be too high or my camera starts to get hung up, but I have to get close enough to the trigger to put my stone in it.
Nee, also UI-DBZ-Fan, ich glaube, also, wir müssen immer noch darauf warten, auf was das Video am Ende rausläuft. Ich kann mir nicht vorstellen, dass es in einem Speedrun möglich ist.
But not too close as to accidentally trigger the fight. Once the stone's in position, I'll recall lock it and head to a new game. To be honest, I 100% know this isn't going to work, but again, I just want to see the platform. I think this is where I should mention
für Tess ist das was, ja.
This. Now that I have a functional way of getting to army and at this point it's just trial and error, I start putting on some self-imposed limitations. The first one is that I want to start from a new game. I want this file to be start to finish and not return to the other save I used to set up. Second, this would be much easier if I grabbed one of the abilities. I mean, if I make it, I still have to fight Army and Ganondorf, so Fuse would be great, but I'm not going to. I see a path to the end of the game without any abilities and any shrine.
Oder jetzt macht er sich sogar noch selber Regeln. Er sagt sich, okay, der GSI-Skip ist für mich nur geltend oder der GSI-Skip ist für mich nur etwas, ich akzeptiere den nur als Erfolg, wenn ich keine Fähigkeiten habe, wenn ich einen neuen Spielstand habe, wenn ich nichts aus dem alten Spielstand mit rübernehme, wenn ich keinen Schrein abschieße. So, Digga, schaff's doch erstmal! Bevor er es jetzt überhaupt geschafft hat, erstmal 20 Verbote aufstellen, um noch den, ich weiß nicht, das letzte Fünkchen Ehre aus dem Trick rauszuziehen.
Once I start the new game, I need a bow and an unfused copy of the weapon.
So, jetzt fängt er quasi, also jetzt, das ist jetzt quasi ein echter Try, den er startet. Das ist jetzt, glaube ich, nicht mehr Glitch-Erklärung, das ist jetzt ein Try, den er macht.
That I used to smuggle the steering stick onto the save. Because it won't let me pick up the steering stick, I get into position. I mean, I know where to shoot, but I'm still nervous. I only get one shot. If I hit the fan and miss the clip by not pressing A fast enough, then I get the battery and this attempt is over. If I get the clip and miss the fan, I'll void out, and after doing an SDC, you can't use the stick to SDC again, so the attempt would be over. I take the shot, wait a moment, SDC, got it. Whew. Now, after that tense moment, we wait.
Er muss immer eine riesige Vorbereitung machen, um dann einen Versuch auf diesen Clip zu bekommen, um dann 45 Minuten zu warten.
I don't know why.
Irgendwie hat mein Video da gerade nach vorne geskippt. Ich weiß nicht warum.
Going to work, but I still feel a huge sigh of relief once it happens. When it happens in other situations, it always means something important.
Ziemlich sass irgendwie, dass es da geskippt hat.
So we make it to the platform. I'll have to put the shield away to delete my board. Here we go.
So, und jetzt, er ist jetzt quasi auf dieser Plattform gelandet, die er sich out of bounds platziert hat. Und jetzt fliegt er, glaube ich, Richtung Armeefight. Kann das sein?
It looks like I bounced off the side and Link was ejected from the build. But there it is, the army room. I can't really see the platform, but this is all I really wanted for this attempt. From this point on, I only make serious attempts.
Holy shit. Also er hat's jetzt geschafft, sich durch den Boden zu glitschen, auf der Plattform zu landen, die er sich aus einem anderen Safe-File mitgenommen hat und die er in einem Schrein platziert hat, weil wenn du in einen Schrein teleportiert wirst, bist du in derselben Weltenbox, wie wenn du auf der normalen Welt bist. Und mit diesem teleportierten Konstrukt, was er sich out of bounds platziert hat, ist er jetzt Richtung Armeeraum gekracht und ist irgendwie reingeglitscht. An der falschen Stelle, aber er ist in den Armeeraum geglitscht.
Most of the testing in this part of the video is hard to show in-game because it's mostly looking at a text box. So I apologize, but I'm gonna have to lean on explaining with graphics. I'm not sure if the build I'm trying is gonna work, but given the time invested on each attempt, I didn't want to have a random success and not be prepared to finish the game. At the start of my attempts, it took me about an hour and 30 minutes to set up, plus about 45 minutes on...
Bruder, wenn er einen Versuch machen will, muss er den 1,5 Stunden vorbereiten, um ihn dann nochmal 45, um dann im Versuch, wenn er funktioniert, nochmal 45 Minuten durch den Boden zu fallen. 2 Stunden 15 Vorbereitung für einen Versuch.
GSI, to grab the bow, arrow, bombs, rupee. I make a ton of speed food, stamina food, and I grab
Also
an
sorry,
already
der hat doch im Leben nichts anderes zu tun, oder? Also kannst du doch gar nicht.
fused weapon. To be honest, I was just taking my time and grabbing whatever just in case. Then, 45 minutes to drop from GSI. Now, how do I get to this point without too many collisions? First, I thought that if I built a better box, maybe I would bounce off a few times and it would still bring me around. I tried a few different options, but no real success. Link would either get ejected or the box would get hung up. If ultra broken objects can survive the void out, then maybe I can go underneath. While making my Halloween video, I learned that the space underneath the army area doesn't void you out. So I go underneath and look up. This looks pretty promising. I test the ultra broken objects in the void, and yeah, if they are free called ultra broken, which makes them weightless, they don't get eaten by the void.
Mit seiner Verbissenheit könnte er Millionär sein. Ja, einfach ja.
But that means the best place to start my journey is at the very bottom of the world, the floor beneath the depths. Which means it'll add a whole hour to the drop. It's crazy, but it is what it is. The only problem is getting through the testing phase and the time it costs to learn. At this point, it takes me 3 hours to get set up, and that's if I don't mess something up.
3 Stunden für einen Versuch, in dem er keinen Fehler macht.
After a few attempts, I still feel like going under is a solution, but unfortunately I'm still hitting the outer wall of the area, meaning I'm getting pulled up too high before I reach the army area. I attempt to do the best idea I've ever had in my life. I need another stop. One that keeps me low, but also gets deleted when I arrive. Another glitch we should talk about is FE chain, which is just fuse entanglement with extra steps. If I fuse entangle a shield with a shield, then I can drop my shield and pick up the other shield, and with some careful glitching I can fuse another shield to that one.
Also er fused ein Shield an ein Shield, um ein Shield an den Shield an Shield, und wenn ihr dann vor sich den Shield glitscht, habt den Shield an einem Shield. Verstanden?
I can repeat that with an object.
Und warum?
Now I have one shield that I can slot, which will keep all these shields and the object loaded into the world.
Ah.
This makes it easier for me to acquire the shield that I need to put away that will remove the
Das sorgt dafür, dass die Objekte geladen bleiben.
board that locks my build. Otherwise, I would have to drop my Zuggle, find the
Das wird in der Prüfung abgefragt.
board shield, and then re-Zuggle all the other shields. Using this, I can grab this shield and use it to delete another shield, which will then delete the object. But if I recall lock that shield over the void, and I glue this shield to it, once this shield is deleted, the other shield will fall until it voids out and deletes another object. Now I can hang this shield above the void out zone under the army platform, so that when I remove the shield to start my platform, it'll start a timer, and hopefully I'll arrive at my first stop.
Platziert jetzt ein Schild so weit über der Void-Out-Zone, da wo Objekte gelöscht werden, dass genau in dem Moment, wo er mit seiner geglitschten Box da angeflogen kommt und gegen dieses Objekt stößt, das Shield aus der Void rausfällt, das Objekt, gegen das er gestoßen ist, verschwindet und er dann irgendwie nach oben fliegt. Wenn der Typ einen Bombenanschlag plant, sind wir alle am Arsch.
Before the shield hits the void out, removing the object and letting me continue. I'm not gonna lie, it's perfect. Is what I would say if it worked.
Aber wie plant man das? Mit 3 Stunden für einen Versuch? Bro, stell dir mal vor, du arbeitest jeden Tag von 8 bis 18 Uhr. Kommst um 18 Uhr nach Hause, kannst 2 Tries machen, ist Mitternacht, musst ins Bett, wo du arbeiten musst. Der ist doch safe arbeitslos. Der hat doch 100% keine Arbeit.
After testing, it does work. It works really, really well.
So, heute von der Arbeit nach Hause kommen, 2 Tries machen, ab ins Bett.
Zone isn't loaded while I'm at the very bottom of the world, meaning the shield just falls straight to the ground. My next idea is weight. Ghost Glue's strength depends on multiple factors, mostly weight, distance, and game state.
Bitcoin-Millionär.
A dialogue state makes Ghost Glue much stronger, but that's just a condition we are working under and something we will not change. Distance is another factor that we aren't going to change, but it's helpful to point out that as you get further away from the destination, Ghost Glue gets weaker, and the closer you get, the stronger. This changes gradually, regardless of what state we are in. The last factor is weight. Ghost Glue's strength changes gradually based on the weight of the object it is trying to pull. My goal is to find an object that's heavy enough to keep us
Der eine arbeitslose Freund am Dienstag.
grounded up until we get close that it starts to lift us off the ground. And since the object...
Jetzt muss er die Masse von seinem Objekt berechnen, damit er genau das Gewicht hat, dass er nach oben teleportiert wird, aufgrund von diesem Ghost Glue. Ich weiß nicht genau, was dieses Ghost Glue ist. Ich glaube, dass ein Objekt mit einem anderen Objekt verbunden ist, obwohl man es nicht sieht. Und je näher man diesem Objekt kommt, desto näher wird man rangesaugt. Und das ist vom Abstand zu diesem Objekt abhängig und vom Gewicht.
I'm using for weight won't be ultra broken, it'll get eaten by the void when I pass through, giving me more momentum to my destination. So I try the heaviest object I can find, and it's too heavy. I try something 1/3 of that weight, and it's too light. So I try this, which is somewhere in the middle. When I make
Woher weißt du das? Woher weißt du, wie schwer Objekte sind?
it to this point, I'm still experimenting with the box that carries me, and I think why not make the platform I land on
Ghost, du musst Bastelkleber aus Art Attack sein.
bigger. So I make my box, add my weight, and try it out. I think I'm here. I can tell I'm 100% at my destination, but I'm slipping and I don't know why. Should I wait till I'm standing still? Because what if I'm accidentally airborne when I finish the dialogue? But what if I fall out and lose the chance at all? Am I mentally prepared to fight army? Whatever, let's go. This is bad news. My last concern is something I've been kind of ignoring. But we can shove that bad thought where it
Was
came
ist das
from.
Ziel? Sich von der großen Tutorial-Insel ins Nichts porten, sich im Nichts unter den Ort zu befördern, wo der finale Kampf gegen die Armee stattfindet, nicht gegen Ganon, gegen seine Truppen, weil wenn man von der großen Insel sich während eines Dialogs in die Cutscene befördert, wo dann diese Armee spawnt, wird man nicht zurück auf die Tutorial-Insel teleportiert.
Because there's one thing I've glossed over. I've been putting my hoverstone into the army trigger, but I don't really know where it is. I triggered the army one time and said, oh, I suppose I'll just put it here, but I haven't really measured it out. So I do that and realize, yeah, I'm a good bit
Nein,
off.
anonym. Skibidi Toilet kommt nächster Stream.
So another attempt. At this point, I've gotten my setup time down to 30 minutes and my time on GSI down to about 20 minutes. GSI time is down mainly because I stopped worrying about being safe and I just get my rubies and go.
Okay, jetzt dauert ein Try nur noch 50 Minuten. Habe ich das richtig verstanden?
But I still have to wait an hour and 45 minutes for the drop.
1 Stunde 45 warten. Für jeden Versuch. Das kannst du doch keinem erzählen.
I get there again. And nope. I think I know the issue this time though. My platform is leaving too much space for me to slide down and not be in the trigger. I need to go back to the smaller platform. Alright, I'm here. This might be it. I'm not sure if I should wait until I'm not sliding, but whatever. I'm done with this. Let's go. Oh, I'm here. There's something that we haven't really talked about. What am I gonna do now? To be honest, I didn't really think much further than getting rubies to fight the army, because I have a good feeling I can figure the rest out on the fly. Normally the easiest way to deal with army is by chucking a bunch of rubies. But the drawback to this is the explosion is so large, if you're not careful, you'll get caught up in one.
Ja.
And it's an instant death.
Das ergibt aber bis heute so gar keinen Sinn. Also ohne Scheiß. Warum, TotK? Du wirfst einen Edelstein und explodiert, als ob es einfach die Oppenheimer Atombombe wäre. Aber beim Abbauen aus dem Erz explodiert's nicht. Okay.
I've done this fight a lot while I was speedrunning, so it shouldn't be too hard. But I've never done this fight on world record pace, and my heart is beating so fast, I'd imagine this what world record pace feels like.
Na, er will einen Speedrun schaffen, Baumjunge. Er will es von Anfang bis Ende schaffen, damit es ein vollständiger Run ist.
There isn't much need to think about it, so let's just go.
Aber kann er sich jetzt nicht deren
The
Waffen
resolve are my
grabben?
worst phase, and if I'm a choke, this will be the moment. But I make it. The Gibdos are easy, and the Moblins are pretty easy too. Alright, he's getting a little close.
No way!
I choked on arguably the easiest of the 4 phases.
No way, Digga. Aber wie viele Attempts
I get there another time.
Aber jetzt würde mich interessieren, wie viele Attempts hat er denn jetzt gebraucht, um dahin zu kommen? War das direkt sein nächster Versuch? Also hat er jetzt ein Setup, welches immer funktioniert? Oder waren da jetzt wieder 5 Fehlversuche drin oder 10?
And I get out of rhythm on the Bokoblins, and they're chasing me around, so I just jump down where we normally go after army. I figure while I'm here, I might as well try to clip out of bounds. Normally you would need the ability will to do an infinite height clip.
Nein, Ofenkartoffel, es geht nur darum, es einmal zu schaffen. Es ist nicht schneller als der normale Any% Run.
So I have to try Zoaz, or Zuggle Overload Arrow Smuggle. Doing this while in bullet time is practically just like infinite height clipping, and it'll eventually allow us to clip into the ceiling without the ability will. So I get the clip and thankfully I'm here. Unfortunately, Ganondorf only spawns after I beat Army, so we'll need to come back and...
Ah, lol. Ganondorf spawnt erst, nachdem er die Armee besiegt hat.
God, Zuggle doesn't work on Ganondorf from 1.1.1. Well, I'm glad I remembered that. So I make a small modification to my setup to include the message not found sword with something already fused to it.
I found the clip into the depth on December 21st. Aus 40 Attempts, 25 schaffen es ins neue Spiel, ne, diese Vorbereitung. 20 klippen erfolgreich durch den Boden, 18 landen dann im Void auf der Plattform und die letzten 3 Versuche schaffen es alle zur Armee. Okay, also quasi aus 40 Attempts sind 3 erfolgreich. Bro, der Typ ist so arm. Also entweder hat er finanziell ausgesorgt und Geld juckt ihn nicht, oder er ist einfach ein arbeitsloser Vollnerd, der wirklich am finanziellen Existenzminimum lebt, einfach nur um sein Leben TotK zu opfern.
Days of attempts, and this one is gonna be my last.
Entweder ist er Milliardär oder er könnte es sein. So, er bewirft alles erfolgreich mit Rubinen. Weißt du, vor allem, dann schaffst du diesen ultra krassen Skip. Bis zu der Plattform, wirfst einen Rubin falsch, run am Arsch.
This time I clean up the army fight and I make my way to Ganondorf. Now, one of 2 things can happen. The game normally has an autosave right before the fight, so that if you die, you immediately get to try again. But I'm nervous that it may be janky and not put me back here because I've skipped GSI and all. Or the autosave will work fine and I can take all the time I need.
Bro, first tries einfach. Die Waffe, die er hat, ist auch irgendeine geglitschte, gefuste, oder? Die ist normalerweise auch nicht möglich. Warum kann ihm keinen Schaden machen? Ach so, weil der Lebensbalken so groß ist, Bro. Ich habe nicht auf den großen Lebensbalken geachtet. Ja, stimmt. Warum macht Ganon eigentlich nicht Suavamente? Schlechter Fight. Ey, ich habe diesen Fight einmal gemacht. Ich schwöre, wenn ich den nochmal irgendwann spiele, ich krieg von Ganon wieder so auf die Fresse, ne? Ich muss den echt mal üben. Nee, mit Before GSI ist gemeint, dass er einen Spielstand hat, auf dem GSI noch nicht geschafft ist, Conan. Das zeigt, dass er quasi erfolgreich GSI geskippt ist. After GSI heißt es, ist ein Spielstand, wo er die Tutorial-Insel abgeschlossen hat.
Or the unforeseen third option, which is I beat him first try and not even have to worry about it. Now to the dragon fight. As epic as this fight is, it's pretty much an auto-scroller,
yeah,
and next to impossible to die on. Or you can get hit by your wing and die. Fortunately, you start over at the start of the dragon fight, so fight the dragon. Catch Zelda. And that's it.
Die jetzt auch einfach wieder menschlich ist, aber da reden wir nicht drüber.
The Legend of Zelda. No tears, no kingdom. So my reward for skipping GSI is a little star on my save prior to leaving GSI. Also, I get to see the percentage of the game I've completed, which is 0.2%. And you know what? I know for a fact that I can beat this game with 0%. The 5 things I need to avoid are the GSI location and the 4 cave entrances I used. In about a week or so, I'm going to release a much shorter video on how I got 0% and take you through some of the step-by-step of how I achieved all this. After that, I'm going to stream a lowest percent record attempt. I will have to start on a completely new file, so I predict the run will take about 4 hours. Subscribe so you don't miss it. If you made it this far, thanks.
Also, ich kann das jetzt nicht. Ich sag's, wie es ist. Ich fühle mich körperlich kaputt. Ich habe das Gefühl, als ob ich im Gym war. Auf der anderen Seite muss man jetzt aber ehrlich zugeben, ich habe wahrscheinlich 30-40% verstanden, wahrscheinlich nicht mal die Hälfte, aber es ist trotzdem geil, so diese Reise miterlebt zu haben. Und ich glaube, wenn man sich jetzt einfach nur das Endergebnis angeschaut hätte, so, hey Leute, ich glitsche hier durch den Boden und dann falle ich auf die Plattform und dann fliege ich dahin und dann schaffe ich's. Dieser Moment, Freunde, als er den O3 Steering Stick gefunden hat, war, glaube ich, der schönste Moment 2024 für mich. Ich sag's, wie es ist. Als der O3 Steering Stick kam, da dachte ich, die Menschheit ist gerettet. Und der war einfach komplett useless am Ende, ja, weil es einfach nur von der Version abhing. Aber trotzdem, der O3-Stick ist trotzdem der OG, Mann. Alter. Was eine Reise. Bums, mein Leben, ey. Alter. Ich wünschte, mein Stick wäre wie O3. Gut, Freunde, ich bedanke mich, dass ihr mich durch diese immense Reise begleitet habt. Haut rein.